Welcome to a study in my current reads, which should probably be subtitled A Study in My Current Shame. Not that there's anything shameful about how long it might take you to read books, but I just am such a mood reader. I get so distracted. Books will sit there for months. I forget I'm reading them. I'm starting to diagnose myself with ADHD as I say this. But anyways, I thought this could be a great series for the vlog. I see a lot of vloggers, like booktubers, they come on and they do like, here's all the books I read last month, and here's all the books I plan to read this month. And I am nowhere near that organized. So I thought this could be a good in-between that also just shows how long it takes to read books. Even I, as someone who reads over 100 books a year for the last few years, I can take absolutely forever to read books. So yeah, in no particular order, here are all the books I'm currently reading. Currently I am rereading this book, Shakespeare Was a Woman and Other Heresies by Elizabeth Winkler, for book club. This was actually my pick for my book club and everyone voted for it and it was very exciting for me. But I wanted to reread it anyways because this book is just, it's so good and so full of such good things. And I mean, you can see just how many things, like the blue ones are just this time around. I did like a beige last time, but I just non-stop find incredible things in this book. And so that is what I'm currently rereading. I just restarted it today. Today is the 22nd and this needs to be finished by, I think, October 5th. So hopefully that'll be done. Another book that I just kind of started and is due pretty soon is a library book that is very closely related to the Shakespeare Was a Woman one. This one, started off as an article for The Atlantic that Elizabeth Winkler wrote, and the reaction to the article led her to write this whole book. And from the minute I heard about this next book, I knew that Jodi Picoult had read the exact same article, but she wrote this book before that whole book came out. So she wrote By Any Other Name, which also addresses the Shakespeare authorship question. It says Shakespeare. Her whole argument in this book is Shakespeare was a woman, but it's fictionalized, and it's due back at the library this Friday, and I'm on page 157 out of close to 500. And I can't imagine why it needs to be 500 pages at this point, but I'll get it done. And I'm going to do a full review on this book because there's a lot going on that I need to address. I mentioned in another vlog that I've recently started Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I'm roughly halfway through, I think, almost-ish. I've been doing a lot of this one on audiobook. I've been using the LibriVox audiobooks. LibriVox is a free, you can find them on YouTube, but they also have an app, which is what I've been using, and LibriVox records books that have entered the public domain, so the copyright is run out, and so volunteers just read the books, and a lot of their narrators are really, really good. Like sometimes they have a full cast. Like I listened to a full cast audiobook for Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. It was fantastic, and it's free, and they're all free. So yeah, this one's been great. It's great. I'm enjoying it far more than I thought I would, but I started this one like mid-August, so we'll see if I finish it before Christmas. Another Shakespeare book. This is Verona in Autumn. It essentially says, what if Romeo and Juliet survived, and how that would have played out. And I am barely in it, and it's already so good. Like from the first chapter, I was like, did Shakespeare come back from the dead to write this? I've also been reading it since last fall. I read the first few chapters and then I stopped. And then I actually read a few more chapters when I was at a Shakespeare festival. Well, it was a theater festival, but I was there just for the Shakespeare in early June. And my dad and I went canoeing, and I sat reading this while he was, rowing us along. And he did not know I was sat in front reading it, so That was fun. Two more library books, both of them very small. This one, Whale Fall, I was having a stressful day at work, and when that happens, I just go on essentially Barnes & Noble, and I'm just like, show me books, make me calm. And this one, I think, is their like book club book. It takes place on a remote Welsh island. It's like just before World War II, and I just love anything that takes place on a British island, and it's so short, like it's short and it's really easy to get through, but it's so atmospheric and so good, and I'm really obsessed with it, and I'm over the moon that my library had it. And I've been reading this since last weekend. Yeah, a week. I've been reading this for a week, but I just haven't gotten back to it. I could have finished it in one setting, but I wanted to give it time. I wanted to let it breathe. I like to think of a TBR pile as, I saw someone describe it as like a wine cellar. So yes, I have a lot of books, but you save them for the right time, and they find you at the right time. You save them for that perfect meal that you need them for. And I think reading them too, sometimes you got to take more time. You don't want to just down it. You want to let it breathe. Let your brain process it and think about it before you just outright finish the book. And I also just started Haunt Sweet Home. I think I started like last Monday, but I'm barely 15 pages in. But it's so short, and I'm like, I can read this before it's due back at the library. This one is Are the Ghosts Real? Are They Not Real? It's like it's a fake show, like a fake haunted house HGTV show. The writing's really good so far. That's why I pick up a lot of books from the library. For example, I picked up The Confessions of Lydia Bennet, which is like a Pride and Prejudice retelling, and I found I read the first few pages from the library, and I did not vibe with it. So I took it back, and I decided I don't need to prioritize that because I was ready to like buy the audiobook immediately and start reading. And so, yeah, I use the library as my little taste tester for a lot of books. I also recently got this from the library. I was just like, oh, this will be one that I like taste test. I'll just see if it's interesting. And unfortunately, it sucked me right in. So we'll see if this one remains in my TBR or if it just kind of fades away into obscurity, as happens. I was so excited for this book to come out, and I was like ready to devour it the minute I got it, and then I didn't. It is Blue Graffiti by Callahan Skogman. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but he plays Matthias on Shadow and Bone in Six of Crows, if you want to recognize him. And so far it's really good. It's giving me like vibes like The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and it's just really lovely, and I really do want to give it read it at the right time. So this one I started right when it came out, so like mid-August, and I'm on page 17. So this book is probably my greatest shame of all of them. Again, I'm not shame, but I'm just like, I wish this was over already. I wish I'd finished it ages ago. And that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book is so widely recommended. I see it everywhere. And it is really good, and it's really lovely, but it's so immersive. It's so about the setting. It's about the magic and the food and the atmosphere. And I had picked it up because someone described it as like a Romeo and Juliet style plot. And if there is a plot, I haven't quite gotten to it yet. I mean, there is a plot, but it's just not, like, I'm on page 317. I felt a plot begin like in the 200s. It's very atmospheric, and had I known that, I probably would not have picked it up. So I started this book in April, and then I didn't touch it for ages, and I read some of it in like the middle of summer. Someone recommended that if you're having trouble getting through a book, like, make it special for yourself. Like, sit down and make your atmosphere like the atmosphere of the book. So I started taking this one outside on like sultry summer nights, even though it usually takes place like on cold winter nights, but whatever. And I lit like fancy little candles and had like little fairy lights on, and that really was just, it was just the pleasure of reading, let alone, you know, going with the book, and made me enjoy the book. So if you're having, that would be a great recommendation. If you're struggling to get through a book, try and make your reading atmosphere mirror the book, because that makes you want to keep reading and want to keep having those peaceful, lovely experiences. Another book that the reading experience has been kind of more, I mean, the book itself is incredible, but I started reading Titanic survivor stories on the 4th of July in the pool. And I'm not sure that was wasn't very demure, wasn't very cutesy. It was a little, yeah, I felt it in the pool, but I also like felt what I was reading, like the water and stuff. So it's also a heated pool. But anyways, I started this 4th of July. I'm on page 125. I kept making myself read this only when I was sitting outside in the sun, because I was like, oh, it's gonna get really dark and give you nightmares. But at the same time, it hasn't. And I could really just read this whole thing all at once, because the stories are just so much and like so addictive, honestly. I don't know if it's that whole like you can't look away from disaster, but also it's the stories of survival and the stories of like people coming together. One of the lifeboats, the sailor who was like in charge of it was like a real not nice guy, and the women who were in the boat were like threatening to throw him overboard if he didn't like start being kind to like the immigrants on the boat and stuff. It's amazing. So yeah, but I think nonfiction usually takes me forever to get through. But again, I could read this all in one setting because it's so good, but I'm afraid I'm going to give myself nightmares if I do that. So I don't even remember when I started reading this book. It's also nonfiction. It's supposed to be like it's called Cassandra Speaks. When women are the storytellers, the human story changes. And in the opening, it talked about Greek mythology and women's perspectives on Greek mythology. And that was really great. You can see I bookmarked a few things in that. But since then, it's just been bland feminism, bland white feminism, just kind of reiterated. There's barely any ties to like actual historical stories or like mythology. I think I might have started it last November, and I'm on page 150. I really just want it to be over. I should probably just put it aside, but I can't. I'm really bad at not finishing books. Similarly, I started Women's Lore, I think again, like last November, and I'm on page 30. The chapters are long in this one, and there's a lot to unpack. This one, I also didn't really know what I was getting into when I got it. I just saw Women's Lore, and I was like, yes, women, folklore, I'm here for that. But it's very specifically about this very specific, it traces this very specific kind of mythology involving women, like female creatures with some sort of serpent aspect to them. You can see on the cover. And a lot of times they involve violence, and a lot of times violence around women and childbirth. So, and it's fascinating, but it's a lot. So yeah, this is gonna take me a long time to get through. I know. I started The Trial of Lotta Ray in, I want to say July as well, and I'm on page 64, chapter 9. But the first main event that happens in the novel that causes all the rest of the novel takes place on Halloween. So I kind of set it aside and I was like, ooh, I'll save it for winter. But it's a really dark book. It deals with a lot of dark things, so that was why I started in the summer to read in the full sun. But I set it aside for a little more seasonal reading, but now I'm kind of afraid to go back to it. Same kind of idea. I started Breakup from Hell, which is like a YA paranormal romance kind of thing. And I started it in the summer on a whim, and then I was like, wow, it takes place in November in Stowe, Vermont. Very seasonal. I should put it off until then. So now it's just kind of been sitting there, and I'm on page 70. So, will I get back to it soon? Who knows? I recently had a day off to myself, and I said, ooh, I'm gonna binge read a book and I said I was going to binge read The Palace of Eros, but I didn't. And I actually only got to page 30 on that day. I think I did finish another book though, so at least there's that. I also, when I started this book, like, I had thought this would be I thought Eros was going to be a non-binary character, which I thought was really cool, as like the god of love, being like non-gendered. But instead I think she's just a woman, like they just gender swapped her. So I'm kind of just like letting it sit and let my brain wrap around that idea instead. So not as exciting as I'd hoped. Like, I thought it was going to be really cool to see the god of love as a non-binary character, but so far the writing's really good, and I'm really invested in Psyche, who this is, if you don't know the myth of Eros and Psyche, it's one of my favorites, and she's been a really great narrator so far. I don't know if I should count this one. I read like 10 pages. I meant to read it all in one night, but I didn't. It's The Children of Green No. I meant to read this one back in January. That's when it came out. And I meant to read it then because I did not like the second book, and I did not like it so much. This is in a series. I loved the first book, and I didn't like the second book, and I didn't like it so much that I binge read it and returned it because I did not like it. So I meant to do the same with this one to see if I didn't like it. But I have been on page 48 since January and haven't touched it since, so. I got this book in fall of 2021 and started it then and read a few pages since. And I'm on page 184 out of over 800. And it's literally just a soap opera. This is a soap opera in a book. I read another book called How to Find Love in a Bookshop, and that book talked about Jilly Cooper and said, oh, Jilly Cooper's books are so comforting and lovely. But this is not. This is just a soap opera. It's all about this guy's married to that lady and divorced that lady, and this is his second wife, and this is their adopted child, and this is that one, and and he's in polo, and they're at college together, and she did this, and he's having an affair with this woman's wife and that woman's wife. And it's so, like, there's literally like a 7-page character list at the beginning, and I still can barely keep track of it. And I had hoped to actually read to the end by the end of the year. Do we think I'll read 700 pages by the end of December? I really meant for this to be a short video, but yeah. Oh, I also read the first few pages of this. I didn't save my bookmark, did I? Oh, I did. I'm on chapter 6, page 74. I started it back in last year. Oh my god. Yep, I started this last year. Haven't touched it since. I got this book recently. It's one of the Persephone collection. I can do another video talking about these in more detail, but this one is a woman's World War II diaries, and I read the whole introduction, and I keep going to start the diary, but I want to like read it before bed, and I'm like, I'm not sure reading a World War II diary is the best before bed reading. I've also been reading The Spell Shop since it came out in April? No. June? No. July. August? Recently. I took the dust jacket off to read it, but I am on page 89. Okay, we're almost done, I swear. This one is probably my greatest shame, actually. It's Jane and Edward. It's a modern retelling of Jane Eyre, which sounds right up my alley. But I have been on page 64 since, I want to say, actually, I have a date. This is my little, I have a few of them. This is my reading diary. I call it Book Club for One when I want to like share my reactions and stuff to certain books and my commentary. I write them all in here and I date them. So let's see. I started Jane and Edward on February 8th of this year. At least it was this year. I thought it was last year. And I picked it up again in June and read a page and said, can you tell how eager I was to return to this book? Is this the last one? Oh no. Okay. Also started Things a Bright Girl Can Do, Suffragettes, all that. I'm on page 27. I think I started it a month ago. It's a used copy, so I meant for it to be my bath book, but it has not been my bath book, which is when I take baths. This is the book I read. The book that's recently been my bath book is a brand new one, Morbidly Yours. I was like, I need something lighthearted and fun. I'll read a romance book. But of course I pick up the romance book where she's recently widowed and he works in a mortuary. He's a mortician. I've also picked up, this is the last one. Oh, no again. I also started Mort by Terry Pratchett. This is in his Discworld series, which is like a really huge extended universe. They say this book is an okay place to start, and it's okay so far. It's like a guy named Mort becomes an apprentice to Death. Like Death the person, like the Grim Reaper. But there's no chapters, so you feel like you just have to read it all at once. So I'm on page 62, and I think I've been reading it since June. So I think the last book that I'm currently reading is an ARC that I got for free, but I got it after the book came out, so it's fine. Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein. It's actually in translation. Yeah, I think it was originally published in German, and it's just about Mary Shelley and the life she was living at the time when she wrote Frankenstein. And it also goes back to her childhood when she was living in Scotland in 1812 with a family she didn't know. And it's really good so far. And it was one that I was like, ooh, I'll read this before bed, but it did give me nightmares or just weird dreams. I mean, I have weird dreams anyways, but even weirder. Okay. Oh no, I got one more. The Second Death of Edie and Violet Bond. They are psychics. And I read the first chapter a month ago, and I haven't touched it since. Page 17, but I've been intending to still read it. Okay. I think that's all of them. Nope. No. I also this week started Maisie Dobbs as an audiobook. I do have a physical copy, but I'm not running upstairs to get it right now. But I started the first chapter of this because I had just read this other World War II set detective fiction book and was in the vibe, in the mood. So I did start that this week, but my loan already lapsed on Libby, so we'll see if I actually keep reading that. Okay, so once again, that has been all of my current reads. If you're wondering, how do you keep track of that? How do you deal? Wait, is there another one? As I said, how do I keep track of them all? I remembered one that I was keeping track with my secret little trick. So I started Beautiful Ruins in 2021 and haven't touched it since. I got to page 44, and if you're like, well, you're gonna have to start all over if it's been years, I write myself a little mini summary of everything that's happened so far. And if you're like, girl, why don't you just give up and just not finish books, or just, you know, let them be, set them free? I'd rather live like this. So thank you for joining me. If this overwhelms you or makes you feel better about the one book you've been reading for a whole year, great, I'm really glad. You know what? Just leave me a comment of whether you're on a scale of girl, relatable, or I'm so overwhelmed, how do you do it? In the comments. See you next time.